Alright, a quick explanation of a correlational study. Your book talks a little bit about a correlational study in Chapter 1, but it can be kind of a confusing idea, so I'm going to take a second here and try to clarify some things. We do a correlational study to try to understand or see if there's a relationship between two variables. So what we do is we get a sample of people, and from each of those people we get data on two variables. And then we're just going to see if there's a relationship between those two variables. I'm going to use an example from industrial psychology here. That's my background. So let's say we went into a factory and we ask people to rate on a 1 to 10 scale their job satisfaction, 10 being high, and we also ask them to rate on a 1 to 10 scale their degree of organizational commitment, how committed they are to the company, to the organization. So now we've got each of those pieces of data from two people. And if we looked at that data, or those data, we might find a relationship like this. The people who are high on the job satisfaction variable also tend to be high on the organizational commitment variable. And the people who are low, like employee 3 here, on the job satisfaction variable, tend to be low on the organizational commitment variable. That is a type of relationship called a positive correlation. And the word positive doesn't mean good, it's just a label for this type of correlation. And graphically, here's what that relationship would look like. There's a trend going from the lower left to the upper right portion of the graph. So that's what's called a positive correlation. Now let's look at another example also from industrial psychology. Let's say we went into a factory, got people to give us a rating of their job satisfaction on a 1 to 10 scale and their intention to quit their job on a 1 to 10 scale. So 10 meaning they have a high intention to quit. If we looked at these data, we'd probably find something like this. The people who are high on the job satisfaction variable tend to be low on the intention to quit variable. And conversely, the people who are low on the job satisfaction variable tend to be high on the intention to quit variable. That's what's called a negative correlation. And to say again, the word negative doesn't mean bad, it's just a label for this kind of a relationship. So graphically, these data look like this. There's a trend going from the upper left-hand portion of the graph down to the lower right-hand portion of the graph. Now your book also talks about the idea of a correlation coefficient, and that can be a little tricky to understand. So I'm going to look at a website briefly here that hopefully will give you a sense of what this means. As the book points out, a correlation coefficient can range from a value of -1 to a value of +1. So first, if we look at a +1 correlation, positive, again, being a positive correlation, a correlation that's close to +1 is almost a straight line from the lower left to the upper right, meaning a very strong correlation between the two variables. A correlation of about 0.5, a positive correlation of about 0.5 in this case, there's still an upward trend from the lower left to the upper right portion of the screen, but you can see the data aren't quite as compact around an imaginary line there. A correlation coefficient of 0 means there's no relationship between the variables at all. If we go out in the negative direction, a correlation coefficient of -0.5, you can see the general trend of a negative correlation from from the upper left to the lower right portion of the graph. But there's some spread in the data. As we get closer to that -1 value of the correlation coefficient, the data get very compact and very much like a line, a straight line going from the upper left to the lower right. So I hope this helps a little bit in your understanding of correlational studies and the correlation coefficient.